Good evening, everybody. We've asked you to come here because we are launching what we do believe will be a very important initiative related to the international multilateral institutions. What we are doing today is launching a new organization which we are calling the Independent Commission for Multilateralism. And I'm here today with the person who will chair it, namely Kevin Rudd, the former twice Foreign Minister and twice Prime Minister, and also Foreign Minister of Australia. Of course, everybody knows who he is. And we are also here with John Baird, who, as you all know, is the Foreign Minister of Canada, who together with the Norwegian Foreign Minister, who's bound up in another meeting as we are speaking here, but he will be here shortly, it will be the other co-chair. And then we have also with us Harip Puri, who will be the Secretary General of the Commission. As those of you who have been here at the UN will know, he is the former permanent representative of India to the United Nations and one of the most seasoned diplomats we have in multilateral affairs. The reason why we have taken this initiative is that since the conception of the UN nearly 70 years ago, the realities, particularly the realities related to peace and security, have changed dramatically. So what we want to do is to have a very hard look at how not only the UN, but a range of other multilateral institutions are functioning and can function better in the world we are facing today and in the world we will face tomorrow. In addition to this, what we've seen over the last few decades is that a range of other international organizations, as the G20 for instance, have taken on functions which previously the UN had a monopoly on. This also goes for a range of regional multilateral institutions which have proliferated particularly over the last 10-15 years. So the Commission will work on several levels. At the foreign ministers level, and we have a group, and Kevin will say a few words of that, of foreign ministers who will join us. We also have a council of eminent persons who will likewise work with us, and we will also have a group of ambassadors here in New York, in Geneva, in Nairobi, and maybe elsewhere who will work with us, where the basic idea is to build consensus around the issues as we are moving forward. With those words, Kevin, I would like to give you the floor to explain a little bit more in detail on what we are planning to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Thierry, and to our good friends from the international community, John Baird here, the Foreign Minister of Canada, Amir Moussa, former Secretary General of the Arab League, Foreign Minister of Egypt, Aurelia Flick, of course, Foreign Minister of Liechtenstein, Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Ali Puri, former Permanent Representative of India here to the United Nations. I see Rita Hauser up the back. Hello, Rita. From the International Peace Institute itself, members of the international press who are with us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honoured to have been asked to head this Independent Commission on Multilateralism. When you travel around the world today, there is a sense, I think, that our world is fraying at the edges. This is not just the view of foreign policy elites here in New York. It's also the emerging view of the much wider international community, and indeed large parts of the human family itself. It's as if the world is being pulled in two radically different directions all at once. On the one hand, the forces of globalization, which over many decades now have drawn our various countries closer and closer together. Yet on the other hand, the forces of ethno-nationalism and the forces of religious extremism working in exactly the opposite direction, seeking to tear our world apart by seeking to relive ancient hostilities in this, our modern time. And while at the same time, the great and enduring tasks of poverty eradication, opportunity for all, and a sustainable planet continue to stare us in the face. It is very easy to criticise the current international system for its failures. Indeed, the critics of the United Nations are themselves legion. However, I'm always reminded of Winston Churchill and his great observation about democracy, the worst system of government in the world, except for all the others. And so too for the United Nations, the worst system of international government in the world, except for all the others. Therefore, the challenge for all humankind is not to believe that there is some utopian system that our collective intelligence and wisdom is yet to discover. Rather, it's taking our existing system and making it fit the purposes of our age. I'd salute those who met at San Francisco nearly 17 years ago. This was a bold and courageous vision coming out of the ashes of an extraordinary war. I salute those who crafted the UN Charter, a difficult task. I salute those who over the decades have built this great institution, these United Nations, into the first parliament of humankind. Salute the efforts of our current Secretary-General to continue the reform of the system. Just I would salute those who have struggled to put in place the Millennium Development Goals at the centre of the global agenda and who, despite the setbacks, now present us with the further possibility of sustainable development goals for the future. Just as I would acknowledge those who continue to work at the great challenge of global sustainability today, and within it climate change, just as we have heard the voices of the world on the streets of this city over the last few days here in New York. Women and men of goodwill are, as we speak, struggling and straining across the global and regional institutions of the world in constant pursuit of our common mission, the betterment of all humankind and, of course, the planet itself. So, to echo the words of the President of the IPI, Rod Larson, the purpose of this Independent Commission on Multilateralism is not to call into question the system itself or to point the finger at where problems across the system undoubtedly exist. Rather, it is simply to take a fresh look at how the system could be improved for the future to ensure that its functions and its structure are best suited for the purposes of our time. Our starting point, therefore, is to accept that as our foundation we have the post-2015 agenda on which member states are currently deliberating. The Independent Commission intends to consult comprehensively with member states, with their permanent representatives here in New York, also in Geneva and Vienna and Nairobi, as well as with the UN Secretariat itself. In these institutions lies so much accumulated wisdom from the past, as well as from the real dilemmas faced by the practitioners of the multilateral system as they seek to bring about real solutions to complex problems requiring multilateral participation. The Independent Commission will also seek submissions from global civil society to refresh our minds and to encounter new voices from among the peoples of the world, perhaps for the first time, about their deep aspirations for a better future for their families, their communities and their countries. For these reasons, the Commission will not be in the business of reinventing the wheel. I have a very simple view that there are already enough wheels rolling around the world at present. But we will be asking questions and seeking answers on whether our collective efforts and energies are being harnessed in the right direction. We do not wish to inflate expectations concerning this Independent Commission on Multilateralism. We simply see it as offering our collective thoughts to those of many other individuals and institutions who believe passionately, as I have always done, in the inherent value and virtue of this institution that we call the United Nations. I would thank the governments of Norway and Canada for making this commission possible. I thank the International Peace Institute for the trust they've placed in me for this task. I thank His Excellency Hadi Puri, former Permanent Representative of India to the United Nations, who will act as Secretary-General to the Independent Commission and answer any complex question which any of you have to ask at the conclusion of this presentation. I will only answer the simple ones. Thierry has said he will answer none at all. And we look forward to issuing soon our detailed terms of reference and work program to the international community at large so that this process of consultation and deliberation can begin in earnest. We look forward to presenting our report sometime in the first half of 2016. I thank you.
I will be very brief. What we have got is a system that was developed in the aftermath of World War II some 70 years ago. And how do we refresh it, reinvigorate it, and get it to be able to respond to the challenges of another century, another millennia, whether it's peace and security, whether it's development, whether it's public health, whether it's a responsibility to protect, whether it's tackling challenges like climate change or the public health crisis that we're currently seeing in Western Africa. How do we honor the commitments, the vision behind the establishment of the United Nations and the Charter, and reinvigorate it, make it more relevant, and make it more able to tackle the challenges that the world currently sees? I am one who has not been quiet on expressing my dissatisfaction when I think things go wrong, but not also afraid to acknowledge the success when it goes right. And I think of the World Food Program. I look at the work that Valerie Amos and humanitarian assistance that the UN does. These are things that are a great success. And how do we build an institution with widespread support in all parts of the world that can effectively tackle the challenges of 2016 and beyond? And that's the challenge in front of us. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
I just want to add that this independent commission is fortunate to have not only Kevin chairing it and the foreign ministers of Norway and Canada co-chairing it, but both the eminent persons group will have former heads of state and government, Prime Minister Blair, other eminent persons, Mr. Amr Musa, foreign ministers, including of Liechtenstein. So there will be a possibility to look at the current threats to international peace and security. Those threats which were not envisaged or could not be anticipated when the Charter was drafted 70 years ago. The Charter is the product of the thinking of the drafters as in the mid-40s. The emergence of the non-state military actor and the kind of challenges that the international community is facing, challenges to threat and security, could not have been anticipated at that point of time. Equally, the global pandemics. But this is an opportunity where serving practitioners and supporters of the multilateral system, those who've had a reservoir of experience, wealth of experience in the past in guiding policies, the eminent persons, and serving nuts and bolt technicians like ambassadors, will have an opportunity to get inputs from civil society, from others, and, in my opinion, be able to contribute to the discussion of the post-2015 narrative, which the member states in any case will be undertaking. And I look forward to answering all the easy questions on that hereafter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking those two very easy questions to start off. Are we going to rewrite the Charter and are we going to abolish the veto? So there are two very easy headlines which I will not satisfy you on. On the first question of the Charter itself, I think any of us familiar with the international community and what was engaged in 45 know that it is extraordinarily difficult to change the Charter. The view that I bring as chair, I'm open to submissions from others from around the world, is that the function that we have before us is to how to make the Charter and the institutions which it has given rise to work effectively and efficiently for all member states and for the international community. When we look across the world today, without naming any institution, we can identify places where, in fact, the vision and the mission of the United Nations as conceived way back in 45 and in the decades following have been well realised in those institutions, and there are others where we can see it has fallen short. So our mission statement, I believe, is to make effective and efficient the operation of the Charter today. I think in history, in recent history, there have been too many academic exercises focused on how do you redraft the Charter. I have a fear that those exercises get shot down in flames before they even get to the end of the runway. So I'm more into the practical business of how do you make, in fact, the international system work better, more effectively and more efficiently within the framework of the existing Charter. I believe that you can make an institution improve over time. I think you have to be very cautious about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as we would say in English, or at least Australian English. Second point is on the question of the veto. We all know, if you've studied the history of 45, what all that was about. I think I represented a country whose foreign minister in 45 actively fought against the use of the veto power. And the then Australian Foreign Minister positively irritated the hell out of his British colleagues in San Francisco, and his American colleagues, and his French colleagues, on the question of... no, that was simply...
Not on that issue.
Not on that issue, but generally would have irritated our Canadian colleagues. On the question of why do we give a particular set of states the veto power? And of course, this was hotly contested, and we know what the result was. Therefore, this is very difficult to dislodge as a reality in international relations. The question is, how do we make the function of security and peace work more effectively through the Security Council, given, at different times in history, the fact that the member states of the Council have either had a good political relationship with each other or a bad one. And I think we'll need to take an historical view on, in fact, where cooperation even now continues to exist, despite the obvious areas where the veto power has been exercised. I haven't done a count, but if you were to look at the number of resolutions which the Security Council has adopted in areas of conflict in various parts of the world, other than those which feature most prominently in the headlines each day, then in fact there is still a reasonable degree of cooperation. Does it apply to the principal areas of conflict? No, it doesn't. Does that disappoint fundamentally the international community? You betcha. So I think it's important to take a measured approach to the realities that history has delivered us and see how we improve a system that we have inherited. My final point is this. Remember, this institution is quite unique in the history of humankind. Other attempts at internationalism have historically failed or been of limited scope. This one, despite its failings, has been an extraordinary experiment. If we were to have a debate today about if we were to have a debate in the 1920s about what the League would do about a famine in Somalia, the League had no such institution capable of acting. And similarly with the previous exercises of concerted power, be it through the Concert of Europe or institutions which proceeded back in the European context to the Holy Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, or whatever. So we need to actually be very careful about simply, I think, untying the knot of what we've created in 45, given that it was very difficult to tie that knot in the first place. So the key question is, how do we make this institution better? If we untie that knot, I really fear where it could all then end. That is my deep, deep view. For any independent commission on multilateralism to be credible and complete, it has to look at the totality of what the institutions do. And that begins with peace and security. And if you're going to look at peace and security, you cannot ignore the Security Council. That's true. That's just a reality. It's a fact. And so the functioning of the Security Council, including the breadth of the mandate which it currently considers, and earlier debates which have existed in the international community about whether other broader debates on economic security could be considered within the domain of the Security Council, are open for discussion. As I said, some of the hard and fundamental questions on the exercise of veto powers are there staring us at the face from history and compromises arrived at in 1945. But I think it would be foolish and wrong to simply push to one side the hard issues concerning the future functioning of the Council. But equally, we're looking at the totality of the UN operations as well. Remember, if you are currently a person sitting somewhere in the world and you are about to experience a natural disaster, frankly, your first concern is not the relationship between the permanent 5, the non-permanent 10 on the Security Council. Your immediate question is, has Valerie Amos got enough money to do a job, and can UNOCHA get in there with the agencies? I'm interested in the bread and butter of that as well, as how you maintain peace and security. It's the totality of our multilateral mission as a human family. Any final question before we call time on the extraordinarily tardy representative from Scandinavia? There being no further questions, I think we will call it time, Terje. Are you happy with that? Okay, we'll reprimand the Norwegian Foreign Minister in due course. But thank you for coming, and I look forward to your active participation in what we do in what will be an important year ahead. Thank you.